So during the last class, you played the carbon cycle game and you hopefully wrote down all of your data. So now let's see what we're going to do with that data. So on my board here, I recreated the top part of the notes from the other day. You were supposed to just make a graph and leave it alone. So, and then you did the game, you rolled the dice or you flipped the cards or you got random numbers from your parents. Anyway, you worked on it. You should have your own data. Remember, I put mine on the board the other day. So I rewrote it onto the sheet, and I'll let you look at it real quick. So if you remember, I started with animal, and then it breathed out and it went to the atmosphere. And then this one automatically became the beginning of the next one. So it's in the atmosphere, it circulated and stayed in the atmosphere. So this is my data. Your data is going to be different because unless you have the exact same luck that I do and roll the dice the exact same, yours is going to look different. So here's what I want you to do first with your chart. You're going to be reading just this side. So not where you start, but just this side. And you're going to count how many times you went to a certain place. So on my first one here is atmosphere. If your chart's different, it could be a different place, that's fine. So in the atmosphere, I was at the atmosphere 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different times. So from atmosphere, I would go to the 5 mark, make a little bar graph, and I was in the atmosphere 5 separate times during this game. So the next one is plants, and I'm looking at my chart. Yours is going to be different, and I went to plants 3 times during the game. Animals, I only went to animals once. So you're starting to think if I went here 5 and I went here 3, that's 8. And then I went to here once, that's 9. Where was the last place I went to? Because there's only going to be 10 things of data. If you remember, well, you don't remember. If you do, great. I went to the surface ocean once, and then I went back to the atmosphere. So my graph is going to look like this. Yours is going to look different, and that's okay. There's a reason for it. Because carbon is everywhere, and it has its own cycle. It does not mean that one carbon is going to be the same as every carbon. It goes different places. So that's what this first part looks like. Now, hopefully you drew the picture because that's where we're going to go next. So if you look on my whiteboard now, I have the same picture or very similar picture to what I had you draw to the best of your ability the other day. If you look at it, I have the 7 different places that we're going to talk about for carbon. I have the deep ocean, the surface ocean, atmosphere, animal. Actually, I have 2 different animals because it could go from deep ocean to animal, but 2 different animals, soil, plants, and fossil fuel. So now we're going to pretend we're that piece of carbon that we had for our game. And you're going to need this again. This time you're going to do all of this column and the first one. And you'll see why. My first one says animal. So at animal, I'm actually going to write the word start. This is where my carbon in the game is starting. I'm going to circle it. From the animal, I went to atmosphere. So from here, I was breathed out and I went into the atmosphere. That was the first leg of my journey. From atmosphere, I stayed in the atmosphere because once the carbon goes into the atmosphere, sometimes it stays. So that's the carbon that I had for my game. That's the journey so far. So then I went from the atmosphere, I was absorbed into surface ocean. Now the water right here and the air right here, they mix all the time. And then from there, I just went back up to the atmosphere, went back into the air, So my journey so far started with the animal, went to the air, stayed in the air, went to the ocean, came out of the ocean, and then from, it must have been some plants near the ocean, it went from the atmosphere to the plant. The plant used it to breathe. Now, once you're carbon in a plant, if you're in the leaf, you could be used as sugar right away, or you could be stored in the roots. That's where we get our maple syrup from, or it could actually go into the tissue of the tree. Trees can live for 200-300 years sometimes. So if you're a piece of carbon that gets stuck in a tree, you may be there for a long time. That's what happened in my case. So I went from the plant, I stayed in the plant, and then I stayed in the plant again. Then I moved, some animal decided to eat the plant. So I went from the plant to the animal. So I started at the animal, and on step 8, I'm back at the animal. And then the animal breathed me out again. I'm going to go from here. This is 9. And then the last step, I stayed in the atmosphere, and I'm going to put, I'm not going to write 10, I'm going to write end. Because that's where we ended. Now, by looking at this chart, if you just looked at it, it might be a little confusing, but now let's go over step by step. If I start at the animal, I was breathed out into the air. I stayed in the air because there's lots of air, it goes all over, there's different layers of the atmosphere. Then it went into the surface ocean. It got absorbed into the water. Then it diffused out into the air. Then once it's in the air again, it went to a plant. It stayed in the plant. The plant was here for a long time until the animal ate it. And then the animal breathed it out and went back into the air, and I stopped in the air. So that's what my chart looks like. Yours is going to be different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a Google Slides in the slide presentation. There'll be a link to it. Every student is going to have their own slide. What I want you to do is after you create, and this is what I want you to actually have. There's my chart, and there's my picture. I want you to create, take a picture somehow, and I want you to put your picture into that slide program under your slide. Each slide is going to have a name, and I'd like to actually see where you could get with this. So we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to seeing the journey of your carbon. I hope you had fun with this. See you next time.